The events began with a cold winter scene where heavy snow blanketed an old countryside house. The sound of the wind was clear and sharp, cutting through the still air. Though the house appeared silent and peaceful, a voice soon broke the quiet, questioning a certain rumor. Inside, two people held a hushed conversation about a tale spreading across the land, one that spoke of a madman wreaking havoc and destruction on battlefields. One of them curiously asked about this so-called madman. The first speaker described him as a mercenary whose eyes held no attachment to life. He would appear suddenly in the midst of war, then vanish without a trace, only to resurface in another bloody conflict. The other listener expressed amazement, remarking that a mercenary with no will to live was indeed strange. Their talk continued, revealing that this mysterious fighter often muttered a peculiar phrase, "I've survived again." It seemed as though he fought for something deeply personal rather than for money or fame, particularly when the empire was involved. This raised grave questions about his true identity. According to the rumors, it eventually became known that this man was once a prince of a fallen kingdom. Elsewhere, in a desolate, snow-covered land, the same mercenary was seen wandering aimlessly through the cold, searching for a place to die, while distant soldiers watched him in silence. Yet, the only answer he found to his suffering was self-destruction. His true identity was revealed. This mercenary was Yuri Briol, the third prince of the kingdom of Briol, a man who had destroyed both his name and his nation with his own hands. 10 years earlier, in a lively casino called Double X, the atmosphere had been vibrant and full of energy. The young third prince, Yuri Briol, then only 15, played his games with confidence and enthusiasm, boasting that luck was on his side that day. The royal mage, Hernando, watched in surprise at Yuri's uncanny ability to win every round and teased that Yuri was always short on money. Yuri responded cheerfully that his success was nothing but dumb luck and insisted that they should go for another round. With great excitement, Yuri demanded that the bets be doubled, confident in his luck and skill. However, Hernando reminded him that it was time to leave, as they had an important appointment they could not afford to miss. Just as they prepared to depart, a group of men confronted them, accusing Yuri of cheating and swindling money through deceit. The men roughly grabbed him, shouting that he was a fraud. Yuri grew furious and demanded to know if they had any idea who they were accusing. The men mocked him, laughing at his claim of noble birth, and vowed they would not go easy on him, even if he truly was a prince. Their insults worsened as they ridiculed his royal family's strained relations with the empire, calling them arrogant and self-righteous. In a fit of rage, Yuri overturned the table, sending cards and coins scattering across the floor. The crowd froze in shock, unsure of what would happen next. Yuri stepped over the broken glass, his voice trembling with anger, as he called the men nothing but trash from the back alleys. With cold authority, he declared his name, Yuri Briol, the third prince of Briol. He warned them that from that moment on, their lives would be reshaped by his hands. The men stared in horror as Yuri advanced with a terrifying smile, assuring them that this would be their rebirth. One of them screamed in fear, confirming the panic that had overtaken the room. The scene then shifted. Yuri was later seen speaking to someone as though trying to justify his earlier actions. It was revealed that this was during a late-night meeting. The imperial princess, Katrina Ivana Branzine, had arrived late to an emergency gathering called by her father. Though she had sent word explaining her delay, she entered the room composed and dignified, asking her interlocutor to overlook the incident just this once. Katrina spoke with quiet sorrow, admitting that things had not been easy for her either. She hoped that he could understand her difficult position. After his father's recent departure, Yuri explained that he had no choice but to move cautiously with every step he took. He confessed that even sharing such information with her was dangerous. Katrina's expression turned cold and sarcastic as she asked if she had now become a stranger to him. Yuri tried to explain, but she interrupted with anger and hurt, questioning whether he truly trusted her. She demanded to know why he had given her something so meaningful if he did not trust her, pointing to the blue pendant she threw to the ground. She turned and walked away, saying that he was not to contact her again unless she initiated it. Yuri called after her, pleading for her to wait just one more second, but she ignored him. Holding the pendant in his trembling hand, Yuri stood there, torn between confusion and despair, realizing how difficult it would be to escape this tangled situation. From the shadows, a mysterious figure watched and smiled maliciously, as if signaling that a new danger was about to unfold. full. From that day forward, the fragile relations between the kingdom of Briol and the empire began to crumble. What started as minor provocations escalated rapidly into uncontrollable conflict, leading to a full-scale war. Yuri was struck with disbelief when cries of an imminent invasion echoed through the city. The empire's army swept across Briol, flames devouring everything in sight as chaos consumed the streets. Amid the turmoil, Yuri desperately led civilians out of the palace, urging them to flee. The fires grew higher, marking the start of a devastating war. Years passed. Countless sacrifices were made, but the war showed no signs of ending. On one battlefield, a soldier named Joshua was gravely wounded. The others tried to pull Prince Yuri to safety, but Yuri frantically asked about reinforcements led by Fiore Briol, known as the mightiest warrior in the kingdom. However, Fiore was nowhere to be found. Without Fiore's presence, the Empire's forces began to gain the upper hand. At first, Yuri refused to believe it was deliberate, but after endless battles and near-death experiences, he came to a painful realization. Princess Katrina, the woman he had trusted completely, had betrayed him. His father's absence during the invasion had aligned too perfectly with the Empire's timing. He wished it were a mere illusion, but the reply he received to his desperate letter confirmed his fears. The note contained only 2 words: "I'm sorry." As word spread that Prince Yuri was on the battlefield, the Empire's soldiers realized that his death would signal Briol's complete downfall. Yuri fought relentlessly, but he knew the end was inevitable. The fighting intensified, with Yuri enduring one brutal strike after another. Despite being battered and exhausted, he refused to fall. Surrounded by enemies, he continued to fight, bloodied and trembling, his sword barely steady in his hand. The Imperial soldiers closed in, their faces hard with determination. Yuri stood in despair, his eyes filled with tears as he faced his approaching death. Then, a powerful blow struck him, sending him collapsing to the ground. Blood spilled across the frozen earth as hopelessness overwhelmed him. Suddenly, one of his soldiers leapt forward, shielding him from a fatal attack and sacrificing his own life. Yuri froze in shock as the soldier fell. His name was Laurent, his loyal companion. With his dying breath, Laurent begged the prince to live on, deepening Yuri's anguish as he cried out his name in despair. The remaining soldiers fought desperately to buy Yuri time to escape, shouting that his fall would mean the end of Briol itself. Yuri finally fled, hearing the enemy's furious shouts behind him. The Imperial troops soon reached a nearby area, searching frantically and ordering their men to sweep every corner, hiding among old crates in an abandoned house. Yuri watched their movements through a crack in the wall. He knew he could not hide forever and resolved to break through the siege, no matter the cost. His thoughts drifted to his father, and he realized with horror that if his father had not returned by now, the Empire must have already taken his life. Before he could think further, he sensed someone approaching. The door burst open, revealing a towering Imperial soldier. The situation had taken a dire turn. Yuri felt crushed by despair as he stared at the soldier closing in, realizing that if he died here, the future of the kingdom of Briol would perish with him. In silent desperation, he prayed that someone, anyone, might save him from this hopeless fate. Yuri dropped to his knees, silently repeating to himself that if he died now, the resistance would end entirely. Pain filled his heart as he wondered what would become of the brave knights who had sacrificed their lives for his sake. Tears streamed down his face as he pleaded for survival, for mercy, yet in the end, he could utter nothing but a broken apology. His voice trembled with sorrow and despair as he realized that he could no longer change anything. The man who had appeared before Prince Yuri spoke with cold determination, telling him that words were useless now and that the Empire would one day pay for its crimes. He urged Yuri to leave immediately, warning that Imperial soldiers were already closing in. Yuri ran through the dark forest, gasping for breath in desperation as he tried to escape his pursuers. The man's words echoed in his mind, urging him to live at any cost, to rebuild the kingdom of Briol, and to avenge his fallen comrades. But the ideals Yuri had once believed in now seemed like nothing more than youthful illusions, shattered by the harsh reality of war and loss. Under the heavy rain, Yuri trudged forward, haunted by memories of the countless lives lost and the rivers of blood spilled. He wondered in anguish what purpose any of it had served. As the rain poured down endlessly, he came to a painful realization that all along he had been fighting only to punish himself. He wished that one day someone would finally appear to kill him and put an end to his suffering. It became known that Yuri was merely searching for a place to die. Back in the present, a voice spoke to him in an accusing tone, pointing out that he always threw himself into the most dangerous fronts and hopeless battles. The voice mocked him, claiming that while he said it was for peace, the only true result had been his own destruction, and that his selfishness had persisted until the very end. The unseen speaker continued his verbal assault, saying that even death was too good for him, and demanding that he finally die. He called him by his full title, the third Prince of Briol, Yuri Briol. Yuri froze in shock. Anyone who knew his past should have been long dead. The thought struck him that everything that had happened was indeed his own fault. The pursuer's voice echoed again, affirming that all of it was because of Yuri's own mistakes. Then the figure of the mysterious warrior became visible. His expression burned with rage as he shouted that Yuri was the only one responsible for all the tragedies that had occurred. In sudden realization, Yuri muttered a name, Laurent, suspecting that the voice condemning him truly belonged to his fallen comrade. The accusing voice grew harsher, declaring that the kingdom of Briol had collapsed under the Empire's deceptions, that the noble Blandry family's loyalty had been wasted, and that everything had shattered in an instant. The warrior charged toward Yuri in a fury, calling him the one who should have died, yet had returned like a ghost to face judgment for his unforgivable sins. He attacked Yuri ferociously, as if to make him pay for every wrong of the past. In that moment, Yuri thought death might finally bring him peace, but even then, guilt continued to haunt him. In the depths of his grief and reflection, Yuri realized that the blood of the Briol lineage would never abandon its honor, even if it meant dying for it. Suddenly, Yuri woke from his nightmare, startled by someone screaming his name. The voice continued to echo, Yuri Briol, pulling him completely awake. When he opened his eyes with great difficulty, he saw before him a strong man of noble bearing, who asked with concern if he was all right, since he had remained unconscious for 3 days. With shock and sorrow, Yuri whispered, wondering if the man before him was truly his father, whom he had long believed dead. The thought sent tremors through his heart. Was this truly hell? Had his father also died? But his father responded calmly with a hint of sarcasm, asking if Yuri really believed they had both ended up in hell. Yuri gave a faint, bitter smile and remarked that for a man who had always spoken of honor, his father had certainly lived a life full of events. His father frowned at Yuri's sarcasm and lightly struck him in mock irritation, scolding him for his meaningless words. Yuri playfully countered, teasing that his father should repent for his bad habits while there was still time. As they talked, a green leaf drifted through the window, and the atmosphere turned strangely calm. Yuri sensed something odd about this serenity, though he couldn't explain it. Looking out the window, he saw maids crossing the courtyard, everything appearing normal, perhaps too normal. He began to question what was happening. There were no sinners, no flames of torment, no demons punishing the damned. So where exactly was he? Suddenly, a worried voice called to him, snapping him back to reality. His father and 2 others stood nearby, their faces filled with concern. His vision began to blur again, and before he could speak, he felt himself slipping back into unconsciousness, hearing only their anxious cries calling his name. At that moment, Yuri was 13 years old, trapped in a deep sleep or coma. He wondered whether this was a dream or whether his entire life had flashed before his eyes. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't wake up or change anything. The world around him remained unaltered. Events he had long forgotten replayed exactly as before, leaving him no choice but to accept what was happening. Then, realization dawned on him. He had truly returned to the past, to the spring of his 13th year. The next morning, servants opened the curtains, calling for Yuri to wake up, reminding him that it was time for sword training. Yuri jumped out of bed in panic, demanding his clothes before remembering that he needed to wash his face first. The maid, Ina, gently calmed him, asking him to slow down and promising to help him wash before asking him to sit. At that moment, Yuri recalled a painful memory of seeing Ina dead in his past life, which filled him with sorrow and regret. He fell silent, lost in grief as the memories returned. Then he suddenly called her name. Ina quickly responded, "Yes, Your Highness?" Yuri startled her by requesting that she slap him 3 times, hard. Ina nervously asked whether he was ordering her to commit treason, but Yuri replied playfully that it wasn't treason if it was a direct order from him. He assured her that he was completely serious and that he always kept his promises. The day in the palace began normally. The air was pleasant, and the weather outside was bright and peaceful. Later during sword training, Yuri felt a sharp sting from Ina's surprisingly strong slaps. Astonished by her strength, something he hadn't remembered so clearly before, he noticed soldiers passing by, none of whom seemed to care about the bruise on his cheek. Even his instructor, Bernard, ignored it entirely when training began. Yuri felt frustrated as Bernard silently sparred with him, offering no corrections or advice. As they dueled, Yuri wondered when Bernard had stopped teaching and resorted only to sparring. He remembered visiting Bernard's office once, when the man had sadly told His Highness that Yuri possessed great natural talent, yet wasted it through idleness. Bernard had said that if Yuri were only a bit more diligent, he could have become a blessing to the entire kingdom of Briol. Yuri remembered that those words had been the turning point of his rebellion. Instead of motivating him, they had made him lazier and more defiant. Eventually, Bernard had given up on instructing him and limited their sessions to silent sparring. Yuri now felt deep regret for having disappointed his mentor. In the middle of training, he suddenly called Bernard's name and declared firmly that from now on, he wanted proper instruction. No leniency, no sugarcoating. He vowed that as Yuri Briol, he would take his training seriously from this moment onward. Bernard was taken aback by Yuri's sudden determination, but accepted it, saying that from this day forward, the training would be real. He took his wooden sword, preparing himself with focus and resolve. Then, with firm authority, he announced that the time for true training had come. The session began immediately. Bernard attacked with full force, leaving Yuri struggling to keep up. Yuri begged him to slow down, but Bernard refused, showing no mercy. Forced to fight seriously, Yuri steadied his stance and defended with all his strength. Bernard's strikes were powerful and precise, revealing his mastery and discipline, which left Yuri in awe. By the end of the session, Yuri collapsed in exhaustion, but felt a sense of fulfillment. He finally understood what true training under Bernard meant, and believed that his skills would soon improve. He raised his hand toward the sky, hoping that his effort would bear fruit. Bernard stood silently, watching in astonishment, wondering when the young prince had matured so much. Suddenly, Ina rushed in urgently, calling out to Yuri and telling him that the king was looking for him. Yuri was startled, wondering why the king had summoned him so suddenly. Bernard also appeared surprised by the urgent call. Ina quickly explained that Count Johannes and his son had arrived at the palace, causing Yuri to freeze in shock. At that moment, he remembered that Count Johannes's son was Goth Barkfar, the man who had betrayed the kingdom in Yuri's previous life and led to its fall. The memory of Goth's treacherous face filled Yuri with burning anger. He called out to Ina in a firm voice, and when she responded with concern, he asked where Goth was. Later, at a formal banquet, the royal family gathered with Count Johannes and his son. Yuri sat opposite the guests, his expression calm but severe. The attendees noticed a significant change in him and whispered among themselves, wondering about the reason behind it. Count Johannes observed Yuri's improved appearance and remarked on how much stronger and healthier he looked. The king joked that Yuri must have found something special to make such progress. The king continued, saying that the count's son was quite intelligent, to which the count modestly replied that he still had much to learn. Goth Barkfar turned toward the second prince with admiration, but then his eyes met Yuri's piercing gaze. Yuri's sharp glare froze him in place, startling him with its intensity, the look of a man who remembered every sin of the past. The second prince leaned toward Yuri and whispered with curiosity, asking if something had happened between him and Goth. Yuri responded seriously and confidently that Goth had once betrayed him. The second prince was taken aback by Yuri's clear answer, and Yuri reaffirmed that he could never forgive someone who had stabbed him in the back. Goth, noticing Yuri's piercing stare, began to feel irritated and confused, unaware of the reason behind it. His expression revealed rising tension as Yuri's presence provoked him. Deep down, Yuri decided he would not allow Goth to continue acting with such arrogance and resolved to teach him a lesson. He understood clearly that in this new life, neither Goth nor any knight could behave in a way unworthy of the kingdom of Briol. Yuri wondered whether Goth's past betrayal had originated from envy and resentment excitement that began. During this very stage, turning directly to Goth, Yuri mockingly asked if he was truly skilled with the sword as rumors claim. Goth hesitated and cautiously admitted that he knew a little about swordsmanship, confused by the sudden and strange question. Yuri bluntly told him that the kingdom had no use for knights with such narrow thinking. Goth nervously pointed out that he wasn't even a knight yet, to which Yuri firmly reminded him that he was expected to become a knight serving the kingdom in the future. Goth carefully agreed, acknowledging it as true. Without warning, Yuri suddenly challenged Goth to a duel, rushing at him with a shout. Goth was startled, yelling in a mix of anger and confusion, accusing Yuri of cowardice for attacking him so suddenly. But Yuri pressed the assault relentlessly, demonstrating skills Goth had never expected, landing a powerful blow that clearly hurt him. Goth screamed, begging Yuri to stop, invoking knightly honor and proper combat rules. Yet Yuri ignored him, deliberately dropping his sword to the ground, leaving Goth stunned and confused. Unarmed, Yuri lunged at Goth and struck him with a forceful physical blow, sending him flying through the air before he crashed painfully to the ground. Goth screamed in agony as he hit the floor. Yuri stood before him, casting a stern gaze, remembering how Goth had betrayed the kingdom and his father in their previous life by selling his father's reputation to the Empire in exchange for information. Yuri reminded Goth that his father was a great count and a respected knight, asking what he thought had earned him such a title and status. Goth looked confused, and Yuri waited for a clear answer. Extremely puzzled, Goth remained silent, prompting Yuri to ask again. He wondered sarcastically whether Goth might not want to repeat past mistakes, but this time, Yuri resolved to force him to face reality. He asked once more why Goth's father held such power and status. Goth admitted he didn't fully understand the question. Yuri decided then and there that no knight in the kingdom of Bryol, including himself, would misunderstand the meaning of their position and responsibility. He repeated the question seriously, urging Goth to see the truth clearly, extending his hand for a handshake and telling him to consider his words carefully. After the brief exchange, Goth left, and Yuri watched him walk away, contemplating the potential changes that lay ahead. The second prince approached, clearly curious, asking whether Yuri was genuinely skilled in combat or if it had all been a show. Yuri defiantly asked if he truly thought he would lose. The second prince replied sarcastically that he had indeed thought so. Surprised, Yuri asked if that was really how his older brother saw him. The second prince laughed, declaring that Yuri was the kingdom's biggest troublemaker and gambler, which slightly annoyed Yuri. Yuri firmly declared that he would no longer repeat his past self's mistakes and told his older brother that he should also stop causing trouble. The second prince stared at him in genuine surprise, wondering whether Yuri had gone completely mad or was genuinely beginning to change. After long and intense training, Yuri collapsed to the ground, exhausted, declaring that training was finally over. Bernard stepped forward, officially announcing the end of the day's exercises and praising Yuri's impressive efforts. He then asked if Yuri was ready to learn the mana style, surprising him and sparking curiosity about what was to come. Yuri eagerly inquired whether Bernard would teach him his personal style, but Bernard explained that it wasn't strong enough for a prince like him. Instead, Bernard recommended the Brillouin style, a powerful and effective sword technique. Yuri recalled that in his previous life, he had already mastered Brillouin and reached an advanced level as a mercenary, yet he felt the need for something beyond that in this new life. Deep in thought, Yuri considered other options, determined to surpass his former self and avoid repeating past mistakes. Bernard noticed his contemplative mood and asked whether he was considering a completely different style. Yuri requested Bernard to recommend someone among the royal guards who possessed exceptional talent and could teach him a new approach. Bernard paused, then confidently named a guard called Gerard, a man with rare and exceptional skill. Yuri asked about Gerard, a name he vaguely remembered from his previous life. Suddenly, he recalled encountering Gerard during the war, noting that his skills had seemed weak and average. Still, Yuri was surprised that Gerard had survived countless battles despite his limited abilities, and began to wonder why. He remembered a battlefield scene where Gerard had knelt, scolding himself for failing to properly cultivate his talent. Amid the blazing fires of war, Yuri realized that both he and Gerard had been helpless, possessing only rusty skills that could not withstand the chaos of battle. Shaking off those bitter memories, Yuri resolved not to repeat the same mistakes in this life. Confident and determined, he decided he had to awaken Gerard from his laziness and guide him back to the right path.